Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to give my contribution on this fantastic piece of legislation today. And I have to say, Member for Goyja, you did snipe me. I was going to go back into the history of this Act and say that, yes, Labor Minister Carl Hampton did introduce the original bill back in 2010. So well done, you beat me to that. People often ask me, are there any Labor policies that you support? Are there any good Labor policies? And I always scratch my head, and very often I can't think of any because, as was said in the House yesterday, the previous government for the last 2 terms was hopeless, incompetent, a waste of space, misguided, tin-eared, not listening, any number of things. But every so often, when you go scratching back through the dim, dark history, before most of those members of that government had any position of power, you do find the odd gem that actually is a good piece of legislation. And introducing the container deposit scheme is one of those bits of Labor work that I will say was a good idea. Not because it's in line with socialist policy and control of the means of production by the government, but just because, on the contrary, it actually aligns with liberal values of using incentives and thinking about how people work, how people think, what incentives they respond to, and putting a minor value on something that would otherwise be rubbish, and using people's natural bowerbird instincts to go out and collect up the rubbish that otherwise we'd have to pay people to do, which we all want a clean society, but we don't want, it would be better if people picked up their own rubbish. I remember being a student back at Bachelor Area School back in the 80s, and we would go off on our little emu parades. I don't know if that's something that still happens these days. I might have to have a talk to the Minister for Education about that, but when I was in primary school, we were regularly doing our emu parade. We'd go to the nearby park, we'd all hold hands like little ducks and walk off together, led by the teacher, and we'd go around and we'd pick up rubbish, put it in our bags, bring it back, put it in the bin. And that instilled in us the values of keeping our country clean. I remember being a kid back in the 80s. I mean, who else here remembers the advertising campaign, Keep Australia? How did... Member for Goyja. But there was a theme song which I won't berate the House with, but it got into your head, all about keeping Australia clean. Pick up your rubbish, put it in the bin. And that was a value as a child of the 80s that was instilled deep in me, and I try to instill that in my 3 boys whenever we're getting around, when they're annoying me to eat some snacks and food. It's how important it is. Pick up your rubbish, put it in the bin. Don't don't throw it on the floor. Make sure that rubbish goes into its place. So, this bill that was introduced in 2010 was actually, it was half good. The other half of the bill at the time introduced restrictions on, it criminalised shopping, Woolies and Coles using plastic bags. And it's, by all means, I agree, we should definitely not, have plastic bags blowing around the place. Minimising the amount of plastic in our environment is a good thing. But every time I go to the shops and I'm getting my, milk and other cold products, and I put them in that cardboard bag, and then I'm carrying them out to my car, and then the condensation gets onto that cardboard bag, and then it splits, and I lose my groceries all over the floor, and there I am having to pick them all up. I sit there and I go, well, is this really the best way to do this? But anyway, I digress. So the 10 cents fundraising, as the member for Goyja talked about, it's a great way for our sports clubs and schools and people with a bit of time on their hands to get out there, clean up our environment and remove rubbish from the streets. I think that was a great contribution from the Legislative Scrutiny Committee. I think it would be a good idea to look at raising, I would support raising that 10 cents in line with inflation, just to make sure that the incentive keeps pace with increasing prices. That's nearly 15 years ago now that was introduced, so things have moved on a bit. You know, a can of Coke is worth a bit more than it was back in 2010. But I'd like to talk about all the community groups in Palmerston that would benefit from a scheme like this. Groups that get out there, they're always fundraising, they're always active in their community, and they're always looking for more ways to bring in a dollar to help them provide better services for their club, for the community. So the Palmerston Scouts, they've got a great scout leader. I know the Mayor of Palmerston, the Mayor Athena Pascoe-Bell, she's deeply involved in the Palmerston Scouts, and they're always out and about. They would love the opportunity to be able to make more money, bring in more revenue by picking up more rubbish off our streets. Palmerston Raiders Rugby League, very active, great part of the Palmerston community. So many families and kids are involved in that club. The more revenue they can have, the more services they can provide, the more coaches they can put on, the more gear they can provide to the kids. They would love to have more opportunities to pick up rubbish and get out there and put some money into the coffers of the club. The Palmerston Rugby Union Crocs, a great club. They've got their clubhouse in Malden, and they train at the Malden Oval, and I'm working to fulfil my election commitment to improve the lighting at that oval. I'm proud to say this year that oval was not burnt out, unlike the previous year under the previous government when they could not even keep the sprinklers on. There's much more work to do in that space. I'm working with the club president there. The current sprinklers do not fully cover the whole oval. So the Northern Sharks Rugby League Club, who train there over the dry season, they have some troubles. They can't run a home game there because there's patches of the ground that are a little bit hard if you get tackled on them. So they can't have a home game. I'm continuing to work on that election commitment to improve the lighting at that field so the Crocs can have their home games and run their Super Sevens. And for the Northern Sharkies, I'm working on it. I want that field to be green, wall to wall, throughout the dry season, so that you can have home games, you can train at night, and that you can do all that you need to do on that field. The Palmerston Crocs Netball Club, another fantastic local Palmerston sports club. Those girls are just mad about netball. I never played netball myself as a youngster, but they love it. So the more that they can get out there and pick up rubbish, clean up our streets. So the Palmerston Crocs Netball Club, they train at the Palmerston Netball fields in my electorate of Blaine in the suburb of Malden. They share that with MASH Netball Club, two clubs training on the same fields, and they have their home games there. It's a bit of a challenge when you go there for a big game, you know, a semi-final, a final, and there's all these kids running around in uniforms, and you know, you got to make sure they're both Palmerston clubs, they're both fantastic local clubs, but you got to make sure you don't get them mixed up, because there's nothing worse than congratulating them and saying, "Oh no, sorry, I'm not with that club, I'm with the other one." Whoopsie. But Palmerston Crocs Netball, MASH Netball Club, fantastic local Palmerston sports clubs that love to get out there, fundraise, and could always do with some more opportunities to fundraise. Palmerston Rovers Football Club, soccer club that train over in the member for Drysdale's electorate at the sports fields next to the Grey Primary School. They're a fantastic club. The member for Drysdale and I attended their junior presentation at the end of this season, and what an amazing club. They're just so passionate. They've got a fantastic president, and his name escapes me at the moment. But yeah, but they would love to get out there and take advantage of this scheme and pick up any of those bottles that have now come into scope with the increase to the 3-litre limit. And not technically Palmerston, but the GPUFC, Greater Palmerston United Football Club. So they often meet out in the wonderful electorate of Goyder, which the member for Goyder is extremely passionate about. I wasn't able to make it to their end-of-year presentation this year, but I understand that the member for Brennan did. They are such a passionate club. I think they celebrated their 10-year anniversary just last year, I think, and they've grown from almost nothing, just a couple of sports fanatics who were just a couple of young guys who were just crazy about soccer, and they saw some the youth in Palmerston that had a bit of extra time on their hands and a lot of energy, loved running about, so they got together. And I think the member for Spilett, our now Chief Minister, Leah Finocchiaro, helped them get started, and they've just grown and grown and grown, and now they are just absolutely kicking goals. They're a massive club. They're doing really well, and they would love to get out there and earn more revenue by picking up rubbish and providing more services to the community. Bottle caps. One of the things that I really like about this bit of legislation is it's bringing bottle caps into scope, so that if someone forgets to take the cap off a bottle, then it's not going to be a hindrance. So I remember when A Place for Plastic, who are based in the member for Nightcliff's area, they're a passionate local group who are all about recycling plastic, upcycling, reusing, reducing waste. They went out to the Berry Springs Primary School, and they got the Plastic Ninja students to dispose of a lot of old bottles. So they cut up old soft drink bottles and they painted them, turned them into planters, putting potting mix into them, planting things, painting, decorating, and they actually had an injection machine. So they got all the bottle caps that normally would just go into landfill, and they managed to put them into this machine, and it extruded them out and turned them into other things. So well done, A Place for Plastic, and well done, Berry Springs Primary School. Fantastic work. Turning to rubbish in Palmerston. So the member for Drysdale and I are incredibly passionate about having a great community that's a fantastic place for parents to raise kids. My dream is that parents in Palmerston, particularly in my suburbs of Maldon and Woodruff, and I'm sure the member for Drysdale would agree, Grey and Driver, my dream would be that parents can be comfortable and at peace, that the streets would be in such a condition, so clean, so safe, that parents would be comfortable and happy and have no worries with their kids walking out of the gate, walking down the street, in bare feet, going to the local park and playing on the equipment, running around the grass, playing in the sandpit, and coming back, not having to worry about broken glass or any of the other antisocial behaviour that really just got out of control over the last 8 years under the previous Labor government. So that's something that I, and I'm sure the member for Drysdale, will be fighting for every day and every day in this chamber. During the campaign and continuing, there is no end of opportunities for us to pick. Actually, since the change of government, it's become a bit harder to find rubbish. Last year there was rubbish everywhere. It wasn't hard, People were always saying, "Oh, there's a big pile of rubbish over in this park because these people are drinking," or "There's a big pile of rubbish over there because those people, there's drinking over there." And I remember on one day responding to a complaint from a constituent about a lot of rubbish on Emery Avenue, and going there with a couple of bags and my trusty picker-upper. And I think I filled up about 3 or 4 bags of glass bottles out of some bushes there, because there was a drinking circle which had taken up nearby under a tree. And under the previous Labor government, they had fully decriminalised public drinking. They had tied the hands of police, and they went out to the public and said, "Oh no, it's not lawful to drink in public. Oh no, we have the strongest laws." But the truth of the fact of the matter was, there were no consequences. There was no offence. It was a distinction without a difference. Under the previous government, it was technically unlawful to drink in public, but there was no consequence. Police could turn up and there was nothing they could do. They couldn't even ask for people's names. They couldn't even say, who are you? What's your name? Where are you from? What are you doing here? Because there was no offence tied to drinking in public. The previous Labor government had removed that, tying the hands of police, removing their powers, making them helpless in the face of antisocial behaviour in our community. And I think that's why they got turfed out so vehemently at the last election. And we've learnt that lesson. We gave police back their powers. We made sure that there's an offence tied to public drinking. And for those who may hear what I'm saying and may tisk and roll their eyes, it's really important to have things like this in legislation, because what happens when there's an offence tied to something, it actually activates police powers. It actually empowers them to then take action. If there's no offence, then police are hamstrung. And so when there's a group of people drinking unlawfully in a park, in a public place, in a place where families, where mothers would love to take their children and go there and, you know, let their kids play in the grass. I mean, I remember when my kids were little, and, you know, when they were babies or toddlers, there was nothing better than getting out of the house, going down the park, sitting down, having a rest, and letting the kids run around, you know, on the grass in the sandpit. But the trouble is, when the police's hands are tied, when the law enforcers are chained, then criminals are free. Antisocial behaviour moved in, the drinking circles multiplied, and there was nothing that police could do. So I'm proud to be a member of a government that said, no, the community expectation is that parks and public spaces should be a safe place for mothers, children, families to go to and enjoy, for parents to relax while their kids can run around and play. We put back the offence on drinking in a public place so that police have powers to ask people who they are, and if they have a warrant outstanding, if there's a bail condition or a domestic violence order in place that says this person's not allowed to drink in the company of this other person, you know, that's actually a safety measure. You know, it's very common when a domestic violence order is placed where there's assault due to intoxication from alcohol. It's very common to have because you might have two people who actually love each other and they have a very complicated relationship, but when one or both of them are intoxicated, then they lose their inhibitions and they behave in ways that the sober version of themselves would not approve of. And so it's very common to have, on a domestic violence order, a condition to say that this person cannot drink in the company of that person. And when police don't have powers, when there's not an offence tied to unlawful drinking, then police have no power to ask who someone is. If they don't know who they are, how are they meant to protect the woman in that situation from her partner who may be drinking and not himself? You know, and that could lead, I mean, I know the member for Drysdale was deeply impacted by the death of a woman in his electorate recently. And it's alleged in the media that alcohol was involved in that circumstance and that it progressed. We need to do everything possible to protect women in the Northern Territory. We need to do everything possible to protect women in the Northern Territory and keep children safe. Obviously, there's still more to do, and we will continue. The job is not done yet. We will continue to work. We will continue to act. Now, another aspect that's positive about removing bottles from our community is if bottles are lying around, they're often used as weapons. Many times I saw broken, smashed glass from bottles is just a constant problem in my electorate. And when I talk to people and say, why do you smash bottles? Why do you do that? You know, like, just, can you put it in the bin? And they say, well, if I leave the bottle there, even if I put it in the bin, it might get used as a weapon against me later. Whereas if I smash it into pieces, it can't be used as a weapon against me. And so it's done on purpose, you know, and it's a safety measure by people who are in a very difficult circumstance and who need help. So in bringing those bottles into the scope of this legislation is really important because that provides an incentive for people to remove those bottles without having to have them smashed. You know, we've all seen, I don't know these guys, but I see them on the side of the road. They're riding around on their bikes and they have a little, you know, the baby bike trailer, trailing behind them. And they have the biggest bags of cans behind them. It is just absolutely amazing. And I tell you what, I take my hat off to those people because they work so hard running around collecting those 10 cents. It is an absolute honour to them that they are working so hard to keep our community safe, our community clean, and pick up all those bottles. And I look forward to all of those community groups that I mentioned, the Good Samaritans in the community, the people who are just running around, you know, responding to their natural incentives, chasing the 10 cents, you know, maybe hopefully 15 cents in the future, maybe 20 cents, who knows, and picking up all those bottles so that they don't have to be smashed, so that, you know, the women in my electorate who are living in difficult circumstances don't have to be afraid that those bottles will be used as a weapon against them later that night. And while I'm here, I would like to give a shout out to Trevor Jenkins, the garbage warrior, who really set the standard so many years ago by just, you know, he got a personal mission. I'm not sure what motivated him, but he made it a decision himself to get out there and become a one-man clean-up band. And I don't think he made any money out of it. He would just get out there and, you know, pick up all the rubbish, and if a bin was too far away, he'd put it in one place so it was easy for the council to come along and pick it up. So thank you, Trevor, for all your hard work over the years picking up rubbish. We appreciate it. And before I finish up, I'd just like to round off on where I started, which is on the liberal values of incentives guiding behaviour rather than the socialist tendency to use the heavy hand of punishment. So when you look at behaviour that, you know, humans have a nature. Socialists always want to rule by control and punishment, you know, and they're not happy until they can enforce thought crime. And that's something that we're seeing around the world right now, where speech is being controlled, where language is being controlled. And that's the natural endpoint of those on that side. So that is the natural tendency. But for the liberals in the world, they seek to let people be free, let the marketplace of ideas flourish. They're not afraid of free speech. They're not afraid of people speaking their mind. And I pick up on the comments, I pick up on the head rolling, I pick up on the eye rolling, but it's true. And you're reacting because you feel that it's piercing your heart. You're feeling convicted. I pick up on the laughter from the member for Johnston. I pick up on the laughter from the member for Nightcliff. Right? You're reacting because you're feeling convicted. Right? You know that you would love nothing more than to control people's speech. Nothing more than to control what people think.
Member for Blaine, can you direct your comments through me, please?
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Johnston.
Thank you. But I pick up on those interjections. And moving on, I note that in opposition to liberal values of free speech, letting the marketplace of ideas flourish, letting if someone has a silly thing to say that some may find offensive, then they should be punished in the marketplace of ideas. they should face the consequences of what they've said. We should not seek to control their speech unless they directly incite violence. So this bill seeks to work with the natural incentives of people to get out there, pick up rubbish, bring it into a recycling depot and clean up our community. And Madam Speaker, I thank the Minister and I commend this bill to the House.